I stopped writing to his mother because I couldn't lie anymore. It started as a favor. Something simple. We were all lined up at the barracks when my commanding officer walked in holding a letter, his face stiff like always. "Private Singh," he called. I stepped forward. "You've been requested to write to Mrs. Emerson. Her son, Private Matthew Emerson, hasn't been able to send letters home. You'll write updates. Keep it hopeful, that's all." At first, I didn't think much of it. Soldiers get assigned strange tasks sometimes, especially when there's family back home who needs comfort. I wrote the first letter that night. "Dear Mrs. Emerson, Matthew is doing well. He's strong, brave, and everyone respects him. We're lucky to have him with us. He misses home, but he keeps pushing forward. You raised a good man. Singh." I didn't know Matthew very well. He was quiet. One of those types who kept to himself unless someone messed with him. A little too nice for the group we had. But he didn't complain, not once. I figured if I had to lie, I might as well lie in a way that felt comforting. Weeks passed. Every few days I'd write another letter. I added more details, things I imagined he'd say, or things that sounded harmless. I'd tell her about him laughing at a joke, he didn't, or playing cards with the rest of us. He mostly sat alone. I told her he'd talk about home all the time, ask about her garden. She wrote back sometimes. She always thanked me for being his friend. She said it meant the world to her to know he was around someone who cared. That made me feel like shit. Because I didn't care. Matthew was a ghost in our unit. He was there, but not with us. He was soft, kind, and too gentle for the things we were seeing. And then he stopped talking altogether. I saw him flinch every time we got a new assignment. I watched him press his fingers into his temples like he was trying to hold himself together. Some nights, he'd sit on his bunk long after lights out staring at nothing. I didn't tell her that, obviously. I told her he was adjusting well, that he was sleeping fine, that he even cracked a joke about MREs. Every letter made me feel like a thief, stealing her comfort with lies. One day we were sent on a recon that went sideways. It was supposed to be a routine check. We got ambushed. Bullets flying. Screams. Confusion. I remember ducking behind a burnt-out car, firing back. I shouted for cover. That's when I saw Matthew. He was standing out in the open, frozen. He didn't even raise his rifle. I yelled at him, "Get down!" But he just stood there. A second later, he went down. Hard. He didn't scream. Didn't even look shocked. He just dropped like a sack of bricks. When it was over, we dragged him back. Bullet to the shoulder. He was lucky it hadn't hit his chest. But that wasn't the real damage. They patched him up, gave him a desk roll. But he never came back from it. His body healed. His mind? I don't think so. The letters got harder to write. I didn't know what to say anymore. She kept asking questions. What is his favorite thing to do there? What do you all do on weekends? Has he been eating okay? I made up answers, but I was running out of lies. I tried to talk to him once. After dinner, I sat next to him. "Want me to tell her anything specific?" I asked. He looked at me, eyes blank. "Tell her I'm fine," he said. That was it. Fine. That one word told me everything, so I kept writing. But I was starting to hate myself for it. Then one day, I saw him in the corner of the camp, just staring at his own hands, like he didn't recognize them. That night, I wrote her one last letter. "Mrs. Emerson, your son is safe, but I don't think I can write to you anymore. It wouldn't be fair. I know you want to hear that everything's okay, but the truth is, it's not. He's not. And I can't keep pretending it is. I'm sorry. Singh." I folded the letter, walked to the post office, and sent it. I haven't written another since, because lying to her was easier than facing what war really does to men like him. But I couldn't do it anymore. Not after watching him fall apart piece by piece, and definitely not while pretending he was still whole. After I stopped writing to her, I expected something. Maybe a reply full of anger or confusion. Maybe she'd ask why. Maybe she'd beg me to keep her connected to him. But nothing came. No letter. No message. Just silence. At first, I felt relief. Like maybe she understood. Maybe she read between the lines and realized I had said all I could without breaking something in myself. But silence has its own weight. And it sat with me every night. Especially when I looked at Matthew. He was still here. Technically. Still. In uniform. still breathing, but he was somewhere else inside. He went through the motions, woke up, ate, followed orders, but there was no light behind his eyes, like he'd seen something the rest of us hadn't, or maybe like he'd seen it too clearly. We were all bruised from the war in different ways, but he looked broken, like he'd been hollowed out. The others avoided him now. It wasn't hate. It was discomfort. Guys didn't know what to say to someone who stared at the wall for hours or flinched when a door slammed. He made people uneasy. In war, you're supposed to act tough even when you're falling apart. He didn't act. He just was. One night I saw him packing a small bag. I was walking past the hall where they kept the supply lockers and caught him slipping a photo inside. It was old and bent. Probably her, his mother. I didn't say anything. Just watched from the corner. A few days later, he was transferred out. No big goodbye, no handshake. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. Just a name off the list. Word spread that he'd been sent back stateside, psychological leave or something close to discharge. They didn't tell us much. They never did. That night, I sat on my bunk and thought about her. Mrs. Emerson. She probably had no idea what was happening. No clue that her son, her soft-spoken, polite, well-raised son, had gone home in pieces. I wondered if she'd recognize him when he walked through the door, if she'd know what to say, if there even was something to say. I didn't regret stopping the letters, but I couldn't shake the guilt either. Maybe I should have kept writing, not with lies, but with something real, something that might have helped her prepare. Because no one tells mothers the truth, not until it's too late. Weeks passed. The war didn't pause for anyone's trauma. Missions continued. We lost others, gained new guys, faces changed, but some ghosts stayed. Then I got a letter. My name wasn't on it, but the CO handed it to me like he already knew it was for me. It was from her. She didn't yell. She didn't plead. She just wrote with a kind of sadness I hadn't expected. Dear Singh, I understand why you stopped writing. I suspected for a while that something wasn't right. A mother always knows. Even when the words are kind, there's a silence behind them. Thank you for what you did, for the comfort you gave me while it lasted. I don't blame you. Matthew came home last week. He barely spoke, just sat in his room for hours. He doesn't look me in the eyes anymore, and when I touch his arm, he flinches. They say I should be grateful he's alive, but I don't know what that means now. I lost something, even if I didn't lose him entirely. And I think you lost something too. You're a good man. I just wish the world didn't need boys like you to carry this weight. Evelyn Emerson. Read it 3 times before folding it and slipping it into my shirt pocket. That was the first time I cried since arriving. Not because I was sad, but because her words were the first real thing I'd heard in months. They made me realize something. I didn't want to admit we all go to war with something inside us, and we all come back missing pieces. Matthew just happened to lose the part he needed most. And I was the one who watched it happen and said nothing after I read Mrs. Emerson's letter. I didn't sleep. I laid there staring at the ceiling in the dark, my hands behind my head, her words echoing over and over. You lost something too. She didn't even know me. Not really. But somehow, she knew exactly what was happening inside me. I hadn't told anyone what I was carrying. Nobody did, really. You joke, you drink, you distract yourself. That's the way soldiers handle pain, by pretending it's not there. But her words cut through all that. She saw something no one else had, even from thousands of miles away. Matthew haunted me. Not his death, because he didn't die, but the way he faded. The way a man could still be alive and yet so far gone you couldn't reach him. I used to think war was about life and death. Simple, black and white. But that's not true. The real war is what happens in between, when you survive but lose everything that made you human. After his transfer, I thought maybe I'd stop thinking about him so much. But the space he left behind kept reminding me he had once been there. I couldn't sit at the mess table without noticing the empty chair where he used to eat in silence. I couldn't walk past the rec room without seeing that one corner where he'd sit and stare. A week later, I saw a new guy get assigned to our unit. Fresh face. Still had that glow of someone who hadn't been broken in yet. He asked too many questions. Smiled too much. And I hated him for it. Not because he did anything wrong, but because he reminded me of Matthew when he first arrived. Quiet, respectful, out of place. The new guy's name was Carter, and the first time he sat across from me during dinner, he said, "You've been here a while, huh?" I just nodded. He asked, "What's it like, really?" I wanted to lie. Tell him it wasn't that bad, that we were holding it down, doing our part. But something inside me cracked, just a little. So I said, "It eats you. Slow, quiet, like rust. You won't even notice it until something inside you stops working." He looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. He didn't ask more after that. Later that night, one of the older guys, Bennett, pulled me aside. "You okay?" he asked. "You've been off." I shrugged. "Just tired." He narrowed his eyes. "You thinking about Emerson?" I looked at him, surprised he even brought the name up. "Yeah," I said. He sighed. "We all are. We just don't say it. He wasn't the first. Won't be the last." "Doesn't that bother you?" I asked. "Every damn day," he replied. "But if we stop to feel it, we fall apart too." I wanted to say that we should feel it, that pretending it's normal is why guys like Matthew never speak up. But I didn't. What was the point? No one wanted to talk about the ones who cracked, the ones who didn't make it all the way, even if they came back in one piece. I started writing again. Not to Mrs. Emerson, not to anyone back home. Just to myself. A small notebook I kept under my pillow. I didn't even know why I did it. Maybe because I was scared of becoming like him. Maybe because I already was. June 12th. I watched a man disappear without dying. I think I understand now what silence really sounds like. June 15th. I haven't laughed in weeks. I don't even remember what's funny anymore. June 20th. Sometimes I wonder what my mother would write to me if she knew who I've become. Never signed my name in those pages. They were just thoughts. Words I couldn't say out loud. But it helped. A little. It was better than lying. One night, I opened that notebook and wrote something I didn't expect. I wish I had told her the truth from the beginning. Not just for her. For him. Maybe if someone had spoken honestly, he wouldn't have gone silent. Maybe if someone had said, "You're not okay," it would have made a difference. But nobody says that here. Not until it's too late. 2 weeks. After I started writing in the notebook, something happened that shook me in a way I didn't see coming. Carter, the new guy, had his first mission. A basic patrol, nothing too dangerous. We all went through it. Everyone gets their nerves tested eventually. But when he came back, he didn't say a word for hours. Sat in his bunk, still in full gear, rifle still slung over his shoulder, eyes wide open. It was all too familiar. I watched from across the room. No one else paid much attention. Guys passed by, cracked jokes, played cards. I just stared, because I saw it. The beginning of the crack. That look Matthew had the first time things got loud. The look that never left after that. I walked over and sat on the bunk beside him. "You good?" I asked. He blinked and turned to me. "Yeah, just a lot to take in." I nodded slowly. "Yeah." He hesitated, then said, "There was this kid, maybe 12, just watching us. Didn't blink, didn't smile, just stared, like he already hated us." I let him speak. I didn't interrupt. I kept thinking, what if that was my little brother back home, just stuck in this, looking at men with guns like they were monsters? I didn't tell him that this thought would follow him forever, that every time he closed his eyes, he'd wonder if he was the monster, that some days it wouldn't matter how many orders he followed, or how many people told him he did the right thing. Instead, I said, "It gets easier." But even I didn't believe that anymore. After he left the room, I opened the notebook again and wrote, June 26th. I lied again. Told a kid it gets easier. But maybe that's the only way to keep them standing. The notebook was full of those kinds of lines now. Small confessions, quiet truths I didn't have the guts to say out loud. I flipped through the pages one night and realized I'd written Matthew's name more than 20 times, like I was trying to keep him alive somehow, or maybe punish myself for not doing more when he needed someone. That guilt never really left me. It lingered. In every mission, in every quiet moment, in every glance I gave someone who looked a little too lost, I started thinking about going home. I wasn't near the end of my deployment, but the thought was there. Some nights, I'd picture the airport, my mother's face, the silence of my bedroom. I wondered if I'd even feel normal again. If I'd know how to talk to people who hadn't seen what I'd seen. I didn't think I would, but I also didn't want to end up like Matthew. I didn't want to be another ghost in a uniform. So I made a decision. I wrote another letter, not to Mrs. Emerson, to Matthew. I didn't know if he'd ever read it. I didn't even know where he was. But I wrote anyway. Hey, Emerson, I don't know if this will reach you. I just needed to say a few things. I should have talked to you when you were here, really talked. I should have asked if you were okay instead of lying for you. I thought I was doing you a favor. I thought silence was protection. But maybe that's what broke you. And I hate that I saw it happening and did nothing. You didn't deserve what happened to you. And I hope, wherever you are, someone is helping you put the pieces back together. I hope you don't feel as alone as you did here. You weren't weak. You were just real in a place that demands masks. I'm sorry. Sing. I sealed the letter but never sent it. I kept it inside the notebook, folded neatly between the pages. A silent apology to a man who couldn't hear it. But writing it made me feel something shift. Like maybe I could still be saved. Or at least stop pretending I didn't need to be. A few days after writing that letter to Matthew, things started to change. Not in the war, not in the missions, but in me. Something inside was uncoiling, slowly. I wasn't better. I wasn't healed. But I had stopped lying to myself. And that was a start. That same week, a visiting psychologist came to base. Normally these visits were a joke. Guys cracked wise, dodged the sessions, said they were fine, then went back to pretending they were bulletproof. But something pulled at me that day. Maybe it was Matthew. Maybe it was Carter. Maybe it was the look in my own eyes every time I passed a mirror. I walked into that tent and sat down across from the shrink. He looked up from his clipboard, adjusted his glasses and said, "Private Singh, you volunteered?" "Yeah," I said. "Just wanted to talk." He leaned back in his chair like he wasn't used to that answer. "All right, what's on your mind?" I didn't know where to start, so I just said it. There was a guy here, Matthew Emerson. He broke, quietly, and I watched it happen. I wrote letters to his mother for months, lied to her face through paper, told her everything was fine when it wasn't. And now he's gone, and I don't know what that makes me. The psychologist didn't interrupt. He didn't take notes. He just let me talk. So I kept going. I didn't hate him. I didn't even dislike him. He was just invisible. And that made it easy to ignore the signs. Until it was too late. He didn't scream, he didn't cry, he just slipped. Silence sat between us for a long second, then he said, "You think it's your fault?" "I know it is," I replied. I had a chance to reach out, to say something, but I stayed in my lane, because that's what we're taught here. Mind your business, carry your weight, don't look weak. He nodded slowly. "You said he slipped. Do you know how many people slip like that every year? Hundreds, thousands. And not because one guy didn't say the right thing. It's a system that doesn't allow softness, doesn't give room for people to fall." I clenched my hands together. "But that doesn't excuse me." "No, it doesn't," he said. "But it explains you. And maybe now that you see it, you'll be one of the few who does something different." I didn't expect anything profound. But somehow, that landed. Maybe I couldn't fix what happened to Matthew. But maybe I could stop myself from walking the same path, or letting someone else walk it alone. That night I found Carter again. He was sitting on the edge of his bunk, just staring at the floor. I didn't ask him if he was okay. I sat down and said, "You ever feel like this place is chewing a hole through you?" He looked up surprised. "Yeah, all the time." I nodded. "Same." We sat there for a while. No deep talk, no big speeches, just presence. And I realized, maybe that's what Matthew needed. Not a solution, not answers. Just someone willing to sit in the quiet with him and say, "I see you." After that, I started talking to more guys. Not big therapy sessions, just real talk. At the mess table, during gear checks, on patrol. I stopped waiting for someone to break before noticing. I asked questions, listened more, shared bits of my own headspace, piece by piece. Some guys opened up, some didn't. But at least they knew someone was paying attention. I wrote in my notebook every night now. July 4th, I used to think strength was keeping it all inside. Now I think strength is surviving with your heart still open. July 6th. Carter said he has nightmares about the kid. I told him I do too, even when I'm awake. July 9th. I still see Matthew's face sometimes. Not when he was broken, but when he first arrived. Quiet, kind. I hope that part of him still exists somewhere. I never tore out any pages. I wanted the whole record, the lies, the shame, the change. I needed to remember it all, because pretending it didn't happen was how this started, and I was done pretending. A few weeks later, the notebook had grown thick with words, inked over pain, half-formed thoughts, guilt, and truth. I didn't read back much, but I flipped through sometimes just to feel the weight of it in my hands. It was proof of something I couldn't explain, like scars written down. One morning during roll call, the CO mentioned that a few of us were being rotated out for a temporary leave back home. I wasn't expecting my name to be on that list. But there it was. Singh. AI stared at it like it didn't belong to me. Like it was some other Singh who hadn't spent the last few months feeling like a shell. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. They gave me 3 days to pack up. Not that I had much. Just a duffel, my notebook, a few letters I hadn't sent. The night before departure, I found Carter again. "Looks like I'm heading home for a bit," I said. He looked surprised. "Damn, you lucky." "Yeah," I said. But it didn't feel lucky. It felt unfinished. We shook hands. Tight. Solid. "You take care of yourself," I told him. "And don't sit on shit. Talk, even if it's dumb, even if it hurts." He nodded. "You too." The plane ride was a blur. I watched the sky from the window but didn't feel anything. No excitement. No dread. Just numb. Like I was going somewhere my body recognized but my mind had left behind. Back home everything was the same. Too clean, too quiet, too normal. My mother cried when she saw me. My father shook my hand like I was a guest. They meant well, but I could feel it in the air. They didn't know who I was anymore, and I didn't know how to tell them. The first night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing sounds that weren't there. Boots on gravel, gunfire in the distance, breathing that wasn't mine. I got up and sat at the kitchen table, my notebook in front of me, the letter to Matthew still folded inside. I thought about throwing it away, but instead, I opened a clean page and started writing again. July 18th. I'm home, but I'm not home. The house fits, but I don't. Everyone's asking how I am, and I don't have an answer that won't scare them. I didn't see friends, didn't go out, just stayed close to home. People called, sent texts, dropped by. I smiled, nodded, said the things you're supposed to say. Yeah, it's good to be back. Yeah, I'm doing fine. But every night, I wrote the truth. One evening, my mother came into the room while I was writing. She sat across from me and said, "You've changed." I looked up. "Yeah." She hesitated. "You want to talk?" I thought about it. Thought about how easy it would be to just say no, to keep her safe from the things inside me. But something about her eyes reminded me of Mrs. Emerson, a woman trying to reach her son before it was too late. So I said, "I saw a guy fall apart over there, and I couldn't stop it. I lied to his mother for months because I thought it was helping, but I think it just made everything worse." My mom didn't flinch. She just listened. I keep wondering what would have happened if someone told me the truth before I went. That it wouldn't just be guns and orders. That it would be watching people come undone. That sometimes you survive and still lose. She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Warm, familiar. It made something in my chest crack open. "You're still here," she said. "Even if it hurts. That matters." I didn't cry. Not then. But something inside shifted again. A small step. A slow one. Later that night I went online and searched for Matthew. Found nothing. No social media. No updates. Just silence. I didn't know if that was good or bad, but it made the absence feel permanent. So I wrote again. July 22nd. Maybe healing doesn't mean forgetting. Maybe it just means learning how to carry it without falling over. And I kept the notebook close, because no one else might understand what we carry, but at least I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. A few days into being home, I got a letter. Not from anyone I expected. Not Carter, not anyone from base. It was from a woman named Karen Temple, someone I didn't know. The handwriting on the envelope was careful, almost delicate. Inside, a single page, typed. Dear Singh, you don't know me, but I know of you. I'm Matthew's cousin. I'm writing because Evelyn, his mother, told me about the letters you wrote. She showed me parts of them. She told me how you stopped writing and why. She also told me that after your last letter, something changed in her. She said it was the first time she realized how deep her son had sunk. Matthew is still alive, still struggling, but he's getting help now. Therapy, support groups. He's not talking much, but he listens, and he wants to get better. That's something. I just wanted you to know your honesty mattered. I don't think anyone else ever told him that what he was going through wasn't weakness. He remembers you. He asked about you once, just said, that guy, Singh, he got it, that's all. I thought maybe you needed to hear it. Karen. I folded the letter carefully, hands shaking slightly. For a long time, I just sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing, letter in one hand, pen in the other. He got it. That was the first time I felt something close to peace since he left. It didn't fix anything, but it gave meaning to what I thought was failure. Maybe I couldn't stop what happened to him, but maybe the fact that I noticed, maybe that mattered more than I thought. That night, I wrote in the notebook again, July 27th. He remembers me. After everything, he still knows I saw him. That has to count for something. Maybe we don't always get to save people, but sometimes not walking away is enough. I carried that letter with me the rest of my leave, tucked into the back of the notebook, behind all the pages of doubt and guilt and silence. It was something solid, something true. One morning I went for a walk. I ended up at the local high school football field. It was empty, quiet. I stood near the edge of the bleachers looking at the grass, thought about how small everything felt here, how unreal, like I'd stepped into a dream version of life and didn't know how to wake up. A group of teenagers passed by, loud, laughing. One of them bumped into me by accident, turned and said, "Sorry, man," before running off, and I just stood there watching them. Their lives weren't simple, no one's is, but they were untouched. That's the word that hit me. Untouched, by the kind of darkness I'd seen. Untouched like Matthew had been once before war found him and chewed through him slowly. I sat down on the cold bleachers and opened the notebook. July 30th. I used to resent people who didn't understand. Now I just hope they never do. That's not weakness. That's mercy. I stayed there for hours writing, page after page. Not about Matthew, not even about myself. Just thoughts. About Carter. About the silence between soldiers. About the gap between who we are and who we're expected to be. Then I wrote something I hadn't dared write before. Maybe I want to help. Maybe I want to do more than survive this. I didn't know what that meant yet. Not exactly. But I knew it was real. And that was enough for now. Before I left the field, I pulled out the folded letter, the one I'd written to Matthew and never sent, and placed it between the last 2 pages of my notebook. I didn't need to send it anymore. He'd gotten the message another way. Through whatever memory still lived in him of the days we spent side by side, saying nothing, but seeing everything. Back at home, my mother asked me what I wanted to do with the rest of my leave. I said, just write. And for once, that was the only answer that made sense. The last week of my leave, I didn't do much. I didn't try to catch up with old friends. Didn't go out to bars or watch TV like I used to. I kept to myself mostly. Wrote a lot. Thought more. And one night I did something I never expected. I called Mrs. Emerson. I still had her number from the envelope she once mailed her reply in. I stared at it for over an hour before dialing. I told myself I wouldn't say much. Maybe just thank her for the letter, for understanding why I stopped writing. But when she answered and I heard her voice, soft, calm, older than I remembered, I forgot every line I rehearsed. "Mrs. Emerson?" I said. "Yes?" It's Singh. From the base. There was a long pause. Then, "Oh my God. Singh, it's good to hear your voice." She didn't sound angry, not even sad. Just tired. Like someone who'd lived through enough pain to see past all the details. She asked me how I was. I didn't lie. I said, getting through it. We talked for nearly an hour. She told me, Matthew still didn't say much, but he was attending therapy 3 times a week. That he was trying. That some days were better than others. And that she held on to my letters, not for what they said, but for what they didn't say. They were full of silence, she said. And sometimes, that told me more than the words did. I didn't know what to say. So I said, "I'm sorry," she replied. "I know, and I forgive you. You were a kid too." That hit me harder than I expected. Because she was right. We all pretended to be men out there. But we were just kids in uniforms, trained to shoot, but never taught how to feel afterward. She said something else near the end that stayed with me. "You gave him more than you think, Singh. Just by seeing him. Just by not pretending he was invisible like everyone else did." When we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. That call did something I didn't expect. It gave me permission to let go of a part of the guilt. Not all of it, but enough to breathe a little easier. August 4th. Some apologies don't come in words. They come in how you carry the people you couldn't save. And maybe that's enough. The next morning, I emailed the base and asked about my return schedule. They told me I had 3 days left, but they could extend if I needed more time. I thought about it. Thought about staying longer, trying to stretch this fragile sense of peace. But I said no. I was ready to go back. Not because I missed the place. I didn't. But because Carter was still there. Other guys too. And I couldn't just walk away and pretend like I didn't know better now. I packed my things quietly. My duffel, the notebook, the letter from Karen, and the folded one I'd written to Matthew. Before leaving, I told my mother one thing. I'm going to help the guys who don't know how to speak. She didn't ask what I meant. She just hugged me and said, "Then help them, son. Help them come back whole." On the way to the airport, I passed the football field again. I didn't stop this time, just watched it through the window. It looked the same. Probably always would. But I didn't feel like I did before. That's when I realized something important. Matthew didn't break because he was weak. He broke because the world gave him no space to be weak. No room to admit he was scared. No one who looked him in the eye and said, "Me too." And now that I knew that, I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unlive it. So I wrote one last thing before my plane took off. August 6th. I'm going back to the place that tried to hollow me out. But this time, I'm not going in blind. And I'm not letting the next Matthew slip through the cracks without a fight. Back on base, everything looked the same. But I wasn't. The routine clicked back into place within hours. Morning roll call, weapon checks, patrol rotations, same barracks, same food, same faces mostly. But the part of me that used to walk through it half asleep was gone. I wasn't drifting anymore. Carter was still there. First person I looked for. When he saw me, he smiled and gave a short nod. Not much, but enough. We sat together at dinner that night. No need for long speeches. "You look different," he said, chewing on a cold biscuit. I smiled. "Feel different." He waited, then asked, "You see him?" He meant Matthew. I didn't need clarification. No, but I talked to his mom and his cousin. He's trying. He's still fighting, in his own way. Carter didn't say anything at first. Then he looked down at his tray and muttered, "Good." That night, I gathered the younger guys in the common room. No orders, no CO involvement, just me and a few of the new recruits. I didn't lecture them. I didn't play the tough guy. I just told them what no one told me. "I'm not here to preach," I said, "but I watched someone get swallowed whole by this place quietly, and I promised myself I wouldn't let it happen again without trying." I saw a few heads turn, some unsure, some pretending not to care, but they stayed. That was enough. Some of you already feel it, I said. That silence creeping in, that pit in your stomach when you can't sleep and you don't know why. You think it's weakness, but it's not. It's your body telling you it's carrying too much. One guy, Martinez, fresh from training, asked, "So what do we do with it?" "You talk," I said. "To someone. Anyone. You write. You sit with it. You don't bury it and hope it dies because it won't. It'll rot inside you until you forget who you were." Silence. Then one of them asked, "Is that what happened to your friend?" I didn't answer right away. I looked down, at my hands, then back up. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to him. And then I did something I hadn't done before. I opened my notebook. I read a few lines. Just one entry. He broke quietly, and I watched. But now I know better. Now I listen. When I looked up, they were listening too. After that, things changed. In small ways, guys came to me, quietly at first. "Hey Singh, you got a minute?" Or "I've been thinking about what you said." Nothing dramatic, but real, human. I wasn't a leader. Not officially. But in this thing no one wanted to talk about, I became a point of contact. Carter started writing too. I saw him with a small notebook tucked into his side pouch. Sometimes we'd trade entries, not to comment, just to read, to understand what was in each other's heads. One night, I opened my notebook to the page where Matthew's name was written, over and over again. Then I flipped to the back and wrote, August 16th. The silence is still here. But now, so am I. I'm not invisible anymore, and neither is he. I wrote that one for both of us. Later that week, I sat by myself outside the barracks, moonlight touching, the concrete wall beside me. I thought about all the guys who'd passed through here, the ones still pretending, the ones who didn't make it, and the ones like me, still learning how to stay human inside a system that wants us to be machines. I thought of Matthew again, not as he was when he broke, but when he arrived, with soft eyes and a stiff walk, quiet, not weak, kind, not clueless, someone who never wanted to hurt anyone and ended up hurting most of all. And I whispered, not to anyone in particular, "You mattered." It was the first time I said it out loud, and it didn't feel like a lie. A month after I returned to base, I got an envelope in the mail. No name on the front, just the base's return address. Inside, one folded sheet of lined paper, handwritten, a little messy, but I recognized the handwriting. It was Matthew's. He didn't say much, just a few short sentences, but I read them like scripture. "Singh, I got your letter." I read it a few times. I didn't know what to say, still don't really. But thank you for seeing me, for not pretending I was okay when I wasn't. I'm getting help, slowly. Some days are shit, some are manageable, but I'm trying, and that means something, I think. You were the only one who didn't look away. Maddie folded the letter and held it in my hands for a long time. My fingers trembled a little, not because I was sad, but because I finally felt something that had been buried deep for months, a sense of closure that wasn't about fixing the past, but accepting it. He was trying. That's all I ever wanted for him. That same night, I walked out behind the mess hall, where no one usually goes after dark. I pulled the notebook from my pocket, opened it to a blank page, and wrote the final entry. September 14th. He wrote back, said he's trying. That's enough. That's everything. I closed the book and sat with it in my lap. The silence didn't scare me anymore. It didn't feel like an enemy, just something I'd come to understand. You can live with silence once you stop running from it. In the following weeks, I started something informal. Every Sunday night, a few of us would meet in the supply room, technically off limits for anything not mission-related, but nobody asked questions. We sat in a circle, no structure, no ranks, just soldiers talking, or sometimes not talking, and just sitting there, letting the silence speak for us. Sometimes Carter would read something from his notebook. Other times Martinez would just say, "This week was hard," and that was enough. It became our way of holding the line, inside ourselves. One Sunday I brought Matthew's letter. I didn't read it out loud, just held it in my hand while I talked. There was a guy here who broke. I thought I failed him. But now I think, maybe the failure would have been pretending he didn't matter. He does. We all do. No one said anything, but they nodded. That kind of silence, the good kind, it held us together. That's when I understood. This wasn't about being the strongest or the toughest. This wasn't about medals or missions. It was about surviving each day with your soul intact. It was about not turning away when someone else started sinking. It was about being seen. A few days later, I mailed a package to Karen Temple. Inside, the original letter I'd written to Matthew, but never sent. And a note. He doesn't need this. Now, he's already heard it. But maybe one day he'll want to read it. And if he does, I trust you'll give it to him. After that, I let go of the guilt. Not completely. It still lived in me, like an old scar. But it didn't weigh me down anymore. It didn't define me. Matthew survived. I survived. And in that ugly, quiet, bleeding war, sometimes that's the only victory you get. I still write. Every day. New notebooks now. I don't write for the dead anymore. I write for the ones still walking. For the ones on the edge. For the ones like Carter, like Martinez, like me, like Matthew. I never started writing to his mother again, because now I know. She already understands. She knows I didn't stop because I stopped caring. I stopped writing to her because I couldn't lie anymore. And now, finally, I don't have to.